The Trump DOJ now moves to disqualify this court and Judge Beryl Howell. Get out. DC allowed it to go on. Judge Eileen Cannon had to throw him out because he's illegitimate. Now they're doing everything they can to stop Elon, who doesn't even have an office, because they're whack. Why is he so upset about it? Because you tried to steal an election, Judge, and then you violated all of his constitutional rights because you're a Democrat hack. That's why he's upset. President Trump and the DOJ file a motion to disqualify Judge Beryl Howell. She's one of the worst there in the District of Columbia. You see, this is the filing that came out in the case of Perkins Coie versus the US DOJ. And these are the, in my opinion, corrupt lawyers who are suing the DOJ because Trump issued the executive order saying, we're not doing business with you people anymore, right? You were responsible for hiring Mark Elias, who was working with Michael Sussman. You guys worked with Fusion GPS, who colluded with Christopher Steele to create an entire fake Russia collusion narrative that Hillary Clinton's Jake Sullivan shoved all over X 30 days before the election, or maybe 15 days before the election, trying to rig the election. So they were all involved in it. Perkins Coie then got rid of Mark Elias, or something happened there. He went and started Democracy Docket, and it's been a Democrat super firm forever. So Judge Beryl Howell simultaneously has, in our opinion, also been a corrupt judge who has been on a war against President Trump and the right for ages now. Here's just a synopsis from Wikipedia saying she was the district's chief judge from 16 to 23. Pretty important years there, covered a lot of ground. Of course, the Trump year, 2016, when he came in 17. As chief judge, she did a bunch of things, supervised federal grand juries in the district. She breached Trump's attorney-client privilege with his defense attorneys, hauling them in there and then using that information for Jack Smith down in Florida, and was also involved in the Mueller investigation, Russian interference in 2016, which was made up by the Democrats, and then also the so-called attempts to overturn 2020, which was rigged by the Democrats, right? They tried to do it at 16 and then were successful in 20. So that's who we're talking about. Fair proceedings, free from any suggestion of impartiality, are essential to the integrity of this country's judiciary, and the need to curtail ongoing improper encroachment of President Trump's executive power playing out across the country. Now, in this case, reasonable observers may well view this court, Judge Howell, as insufficiently impartial to adjudicate the meritless challenges to President Trump's efforts to implement his agenda that the American people elected him to carry out. In fact, this court, Beryl Howell, has repeatedly demonstrated partiality against and animus towards President Trump. Now, examples are many. We've talked about them here. We've even played videos of her giving speeches and stuff. But examples include this court enabling the improper efforts, let's lay it on, of disgraced former prosecutor called Jack Smith, despite a readily apparent lack of venue in this district, right? That's where Jack was coming to her and saying, Judge, I need your permission to do this. And she's like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, it's just attorney-client privilege. Well, it's probably in furtherance of a crime, so sure, we will allow you to investigate it. Poof! The whole thing pops open. Then she allows Jack Smith to take that down to Florida and use it. Why didn't Jack just go down to Florida and get it there? Oh yeah, because there's an actual real judge there called Judge Eileen Cannon and other judges who were not corrupt DC judges. Now, also this judge wrongly suggested in public that Trump is an authoritarian during one of her little rants and speeches, and incorrectly found that President Trump, the most well-known man on earth, presents a flight risk. She's psycho, where even the prior administration's Department of Justice had to retract such a suggestion. It's like, well, he might leave the country and we might have to lock him down here. This court's comments at the hearing on the meritless motion for a TRO, which would shove Perkins Coie back in, including gratuitous and biased references by this court regarding the investigation of Robert Mueller, confirmed that reasonable observers may view this court, and we're pretty dang reasonable here, and we agree, this court is incapable of fairly adjudicating these claims against the commander-in-chief, biased, partisan, and so on. Now, accordingly, Trump writes, to ensure that these proceedings are free from any suggestion of impartiality, the Trump DOJ now moves to disqualify this court and Judge Beryl Howell. Get out. This case involves serious concerns about election integrity, national security, and the past actions of the law firm called Perkins Coie, Mark Elias's former firm. Given the statements made by the court at the initial hearing in this matter and its out-of-court statements, this judge's impartiality in this case might reasonably be questioned. And so accordingly, Trump and the DOJ respectfully submit that this matter should be transferred to another district court judge who's less of a hack, who was neither involved with the Mueller report like this judge was, nor the investigation of John Durham like she was, and who has not demonstrated a pattern of hostility towards President Trump and his administration. Now, they write that according to the rules, recusal is mandatory, where a judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Under U.S. Code, says that a federal judge shall disqualify himself or herself in this case in any proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Now, a judge also shall, not may, not could, or probably should, or any of those contingents. It's shall. You must do it. Where she has a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party. And we know this judge hates Trump, like on the record. This question is whether a reasonable and informed observer would question this judge's impartiality. Now, the touchstone for recusal under the law is this. It's not the reality of bias. It's not whether she is actually biased. And spoiler alert, she is. But it's whether it is appearing that she is biased. The very purpose of this is to promote confidence in the judiciary by avoiding even the appearance of impropriety. We remember a lot of this language from Noxious Fannyland case. Thus, any doubts must be resolved in favor of recusal. If it's even questionable, you gotta go. Okay, we want our system to not be filled with Democrat hacks. The Supreme Court has explained that remarks by a court may constitute a basis for a recusal, if you start running your mouth, Judge, if they display a deep-seated favoritism or antagonism that would make fair judgment impossible. So let's talk about that. If that's the rule, let's see. So Perkins, they challenged Trump's executive order. He said Perkins Coie is a corrupt firm, says that they've engaged in a pattern of dishonest and dangerous activity, and that members of the firm were involved in matters subject to the Durham investigation, and someone got indicted there, Michael Sussman. Now, to be clear, Michael Sussman was acquitted. He was prosecuted in Washington, D.C., and there was a comment, we read through it here, from some jurors, like, we got better things to worry about than someone who tried to investigate Trump. They didn't care, because he was Team Democrat, and that's what this district is. This court is no stranger to this issue, given its role in the Mueller investigation. Now, this court's, in other words, Judge Beryl Howell, has engaged in systematic hostility towards President Trump. Trump's DOJ continues, saying, this court has not kept its disdain for President Trump secret. It has voiced its thoughts loudly, both inside and outside the courtroom. In fact, in a November 2023 speech that this court delivered at a Women's White Collar Defense Association event, it lamented that America is at a crossroads. And the judge wrote, in an apparent reference to President Trump, indicated that one path would lead to authoritarianism. Wow, shocking. But she said in Trump's filing that Judge Howell's remarks did not live in a vacuum, okay? They prompted a judicial misconduct complaint from a member of Congress and serious media scrutiny. And we saw that was filed by Elise Stefanik. We definitely read that here. Now, this court's hostility towards President Trump is also on full display through her disdain for his supporters. She hates us! For example, in response to a basic dismissal motion under the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, this court took the opportunity to grandstand about the 2020 election and Trump supporters, directly rejecting Trump's determination that dismissal of pending indictments against individuals for their conduct related to the events on January 6th, Trump said would end a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years. And Trump wrote that he's going to begin a process of national reconciliation. Okay, so that's what Trump said in his pardon. So all these judges wrote their little whiny final words in response to the motions to dismiss and everything that was coming in front of them after the pardons came out. The J6ers, people were filing things, and so then they ranted about it. The court curtly stated, this judge, in her whiny tone, that no national injustice occurred here. We were saving democracy. The court then engaged in wholly inappropriate name calling in her filing, repeatedly calling President Trump supporters sore losers. This is cope. She's coping right now, okay? She's the sore loser. We won! And stating that President Trump's pronouncement relayed a revisionist myth. No, it is not. Trump said he was going to do it. The American people agreed with him, put him back in, and that's the game. So this court's pattern of hostility towards Trump is not limited to his supporters, okay? It also utilized the judicial power, Beryl, against Trump himself during the height of Jack Smith's illegitimate prosecutor and his weaponized lawfare against President Trump. Like, where were all the people screeching about Elon when it came to Jack Smith? Elon's not appointed under the law. Okay, well, he doesn't hold an office. Jack Smith literally held the office of the special counsel, could do whatever he wanted, prosecuted anybody, anywhere, was not appointed by the president or confirmed by the Senate, was just appointed by Garland to lead the office, was found illegitimate by Judge Eileen Cannon. Judges everywhere just allowed it to go on. DC allowed it to go on. Judge Eileen Cannon had to throw him out because he's illegitimate. Now they're doing everything they can to stop Elon, who doesn't even have an office, because they're whacked. So this court found reason to believe that the former president, she said, would flee from prosecution, wrote Judge Beryl Howell, despite Trump being one of the most recognizable figures in this entire world. Said, noting even the government later acknowledged that it had errantly included flight as a predicate for its application. In other words, we need, Your Honor, to give us access to this secret data, attorney-client privilege materials that we couldn't otherwise get. We can't notify Trump about, why can't you tell him about this? Why can't you ask through it through normal discovery mechanisms and whatever. But we can't because if he knows, then he might flee the country and this could be dangerous. We have to prosecute him. And yes, oh, you're right. He is a flight risk because you suggested it. And then they said, actually, sorry, we don't even think he's a flight risk. She's like, oh yeah, I guess I don't either. I was just thinking whatever you were telling me to think because I love Lisa Monaco. She's so beautiful. So later in the waning moments of its 7-year term as chief judge, this court ruled that private documents belonging to Trump's personal attorney must be given to Smith. Breached everything. She invoked the rarely used crime fraud exception to say that Trump and his lawyers were committing crimes, and you can't commit a crime and use your attorney to cover it up. So this court pierced attorney-client privilege. It's insane. It's insane to do it in general, a lawyer in general, because it's such a sacred privilege that the law really protects. Like the lawyer's got to be doing something pretty criminal, covering something up, engaged in multiple criminality. It's a high standard. For her to just go, because attorneys take an oath, they pass the bar, they go through ethics, background checks, they go through all sorts of stuff. To breach that, it's a sacred thing that they're breaching. And it shouldn't be breached without real good cause. She did it for the president, ordering Trump's attorney to testify before a DC grand jury investigating the alleged retention of the government documents. This court then issued a ruling when venue for the grand jury proceedings in this case were in Florida, not in DC. She said, well, I can hear the case and I'll make some decisions on it. The district court in Florida appeared to be troubled by this court's procedure, and seemed inclined to engage in an extended evidentiary hearing in Judge Cannon's courtroom to address it before ultimately dismissing the unconstitutional case against Trump on other grounds because Jack Smith is not a real boy. Now, additionally, in 2023, this court held Twitter in contempt of court for failing to comply with Jack Smith's demands for Twitter messages for Trump's DMs. She breached attorney-client privilege and then cracked into his DMs. I mean, that's, even for this judge, is low. This court could not resist from editorializing either, asking whether Musk wants to cozy up with the former president and whether Twitter's efforts were to make Trump feel like he is particularly welcome renewed user of Twitter. Like Elon and Trump are getting a little bit too close for Judge Beryl Howell's comfort. So Trump and the DOJ continue. Motion to disqualify the judge. They write, Your Honor, simultaneously with filing its complaint, so Perkins suing Trump, Perkins also filed a motion for a TRO, the restraining order. Within 24 hours of this complaint being filed, this court conducting a hearing on the TRO ruled from the bench and granted the relief to the law firm. Now, during the course of the hearing, a number of exchanges took place between the court and the Trump DOJ regarding the activities of Perkins Coie and their attorneys in 2016, back during that election that they tried to rig. Specifically, their involvement in the procurement and distribution of the report by Fusion GPS. This report has now been fully discredited, and the role of Perkins Coie attorneys in the distribution of this report was a centerpiece of the Durham investigation, which was a flop. Yet this court said, I know the president has just, Beryl Howell, based on reading these papers, he was upset about that in 2016. He was so upset about this, still, he filed a lawsuit against Perkins and others in the Southern District of Florida that was dismissed in rapid order. She says, he keeps bringing it up. If he doesn't want any of us to forget Fusion GPS, if he doesn't want any of us to forget any of this, he really has a bee in his bonnet about it, says this judge, who is really the one who's coping right now because her side lost despite their best efforts. They tried to, of course, rig the judiciary and it backfired on him. Why is he so upset about it? Because you tried to steal an election, Judge, and then you violated all of his constitutional rights because you're a Democrat hack. That's why he's upset. So yeah, I have a bee in my bonnet about it too, Judge. I hope there are repercussions, and I think many Americans do. So as seen in the above exchange, issues of the Durham investigation, the Fusion GPS, and the Mueller report are central to the EO. That's why Trump did this. This court's condescending remark that President Trump has a bee in his bonnet about the Fusion GPS demonstrate a concerning and dismissive approach to the entire investigation. An investigation that touched on the court's role in the Mueller report, and one in which members of Perkins Coie, the plaintiffs in this case, played a primary and essential role. The entire Fusion GPS fiasco is a lamentable part of this nation's history, and you were a part of it. As demonstrated through comments in this proceeding and other judicial proceedings, and in the public, observers might reasonably have concerns about this court's impartiality in this matter. So recusal of you, Judge, is warranted to ensure these proceedings continue fair and free from concerns about your bias. Now, Trump deserves a court proceeding free from concerns about impartiality. And so in order to remove the possibility of any impartiality to these proceedings, Trump and the DOJ respectfully request that this court recuse itself and return this matter to assignment before a judge free from any other appearance of hostility towards this administration and is otherwise unconnected with any other matters related to Mueller or Durham, signed in a very nice filing from Richard Lawson, Deputy Associate AG out of the District of Columbia. And here's the order they sent over for her convenience in case she wants to just sign it. They say, Judge, here's the proposed order for you, just so you can just print this puppy out and sign it. Just say, after considering Trump's brilliant motion to disqualify me, it is hereby ordered that the motion is granted. The clerk is directed to reassign this case to a judge who is not a hack. That's my addition. So ordered, dated, hopefully today. Judge, sign it. Another spoiler, she won't. So that got submitted. Of course, she is absolutely partial and biased and should be removed. We'll keep our eye on this one and see what she says in response. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.